All right, so we've got here a player on the team Startail. He is
Virus.
There's a shot of him in his new hairstyle. Now, his opponent, the Renaissance Nerd, is on the team OGS, obviously, and it's got a lot of fans here in the audience. More fans filling in, more girls actually showing up as well. See Nada. Someone really loves Nada. That is a girl who did that. I checked. It's not a guy. I know some guys love Nada as much as that as well. Thanks to LG 3D Cinema, Intel, and G.Skill, by the way. Without them, this tournament would not be possible. So, very fast gases for both players on this map, which is kind of interesting. It used to be that on this map you would see, and bigger maps in general, you would see in TVT really fast expands, because a lot of players kind of found that if they got their command centers up faster on a large map, you could get away with getting a pretty good economy. But as it kind of turned out, as the game evolved more, people found out that if you go for a fast command center and your opponent techs, Banshees and Pre-Igniter Hellions can fly across the map, so even if the rush distance is large, you can get your way there pretty quickly. And then if you go for a fast command center, or you just kind of skip some tech, you can really, really get behind. So, like we saw last game, if you go for a fast command center and your opponent gets super fast factory, gets a super fast Banshee out, sometimes Pre-Igniter Hellions, you can fall to it if you don't have the proper defenses in place. Now, did Virus have the proper defenses in place? Kind of. He had most of his units down at his main base, because that's usually, especially in other matchups, if you go for a fast expand, you want to have your units there, because if you get attacked, that's where your opponent's going to be. But in this matchup, you want to keep at least a Marauder or two in your main to help deal with those Hellions, because without them, your SCVs are going to be they're going to get roasted. Also, when you split your SCVs, I've given you guys this tip a few times, but maybe some newer viewers turning in for the first time or haven't listened to me quite yet. If you're under attack by Hellions, no matter what matchup it is, select all of the workers in question and press your S key. That's for stop. All of your workers will immediately stop. Now, what does that mean? That means that if you press F1, it'll select all of those workers. That makes them all idle workers. So if you then hold down the F1 key and right-click all over the map, just wherever your camera goes, just right-click everywhere. Because your camera's going to jerk around a little bit because it's jerking to all the idle SCVs. Just right-click there, and the SCVs will scatter in all sorts of different directions, and the Hellions just won't be able to keep up with it. You can do that so quickly and so efficiently. Practice it sometime. It's a really great way to defend against Pre-Igniter Hellions, defending against Hellions in general. Good for Protoss, Zergs, and Terrans. Because Hellions are always a problem. You got to deal with those Hellions. And giving you guys some tips. Hopefully, next time you get Hellion dropped, you'll be able to do that. You got to do it fast, though. You don't want to just put all your guys on stop position then not split them, because that'll be bad, too. But sometimes having them on stop position is better than having them mine for how they clump. But anyway, enough about that. Nada moving out on the map with 2 Hellions. Virus spots us. Meanwhile, Nada is producing a Banshee back at home. Trying to sneak up in here with these Hellions, and indeed he will get inside. Actually going to take out that Marine, which is going to make his Banshee follow up much stronger. And he's going to want to target down as many SCVs as he can here. Wants to save the weakened Hellion from that Marine. Nice control, but it does get taken out. Now this Hellion wants to take out the Marine and just weaken a lot of these SCVs. Now every SCV he weakens means that when the Banshee comes in, it'll do much more damage, taking it out much faster. Now he's actually targeting the SCVs and the Hellion at the same time. Nice control there by Nada. So both players going for Banshees though. Now Nada saw his opponent's Banshee, so he knows it's on the way. And his own Banshee is actually going out for her first run. And look at that SCV he was able to sneak in there. Banshees run into each other, and they're actually sisters. When you run into your sister, when you're flying your Banshee and you run to your sister, be nice to her, even though you went down the same path as her. I mean, you gotta be nice to her. So those Banshees actually gonna go and kill their opponent's respective Marines and SCVs at times. He's actually gonna target down that tech lab. That's Wolstillian. Now the Banshee will fall. Does not have Cloak. Nada again following this up with Pre-Igniter Hellions. Once the Viking comes out, it's very difficult to do Banshee harassment, and that's why you saw both of those Banshees fall very quickly. And actually, both players are going for Pre-Igniter Hellions. And this seems like a very silly and unusual situation, but this actually happens all the time in TVT, because these type of openings are really popular, and if your Banshee Harass doesn't do very well, you kind of have to follow it up with some more harassment like Pre-Igniter Hellions, and since both players went for Banshees and both players had a Viking, both players didn't do that much damage, so they both gotta do something, and both of them choosing to go for Hellions. Now, remember that Virus has a command center up, whereas Nada does not have a command center made. So that means that Virus is going to have significantly less units. It's going to be a little bit more difficult for him to defend, but at the same time, he does have that going for him. Nada just now, actually, yeah, he's just now starting his command center, or his orbital rather, whereas his opponent's already got it landed at the natural. A little confused by my production tabs. I'm actually not colorblind, I promise. Virus is making a third command center though, ASAP, making it right down there at that third base location. Now Nada has a Viking positioned very nicely over there to spot any Hellion drops, any Banshees that try to sneak in, so I like that. And if Startail Virus actually continues on his current path, with that dropship, he's actually going to run right into the Viking. And Nada should be able to see this with the Xel'Naga Watchtower and prepare for it. And he does see it with the Xel'Naga Watchtower. I know we're not getting a shot of it, but he sees it, and he's going to move the Viking into position, and these Hellions are going to have to be dropped. And if he actually gets those Hellions in a bad spot, okay, so he is going to be able to save them, but they're not getting into his main, that's for sure. It may have been better for Nada to try to attack over the open space rather than where the Hellions were, but either way, he was able to shut that down. Easy peasy. Nada's got his own drop up at the north full of Pre-Igniter Hellions he's going to try to do something with. Now, Virus is going to try to sneak in here to the natural that Nada just put up, but doesn't have that many SCVs though. So he's going to be able to kill all three of these, but that's all he's going to get. And Hellions versus Hellions, this is a funky scenario. And Nada's Hellions actually split a little bit worse, I think, than Virus's, but with his reinforcements does hold off. But in the main base of Virus, Hellions are running in, but he actually was able to pull his SCVs in time. And honestly, Virus, or rather Nada, should just get his Hellions out of there. There's a lot of SCVs stacked up here, but not as many when the Hellions got there. I think Nada probably should have just backed out after the SCVs were pulled. That was a small victory within itself. Could have dropped them back in there later. Wanted to do some damage. Now, as far as worker counts go, very even for these two players. 32 SCVs for Nada, or 32 SCVs for Virus, and 36 SCVs for Nada. Changing very rapidly as Virus does have 3 command centers, pumping out those SCVs. Now, Nada's going to make his own third command center here pretty soon, but it's very, very far behind his opponents. Nada sticking with his style, though, of getting multiple factories. Nada, one of the first Terrans in StarCraft 2 to just get a ton of factories. A lot of people in StarCraft 2 stick with just 2 factories at most, but Nada's one of those guys who will just make a lot of factories. And he kind of revolutionized that, I think. Not necessarily for TVT, but in TVZ he did it a lot. He just started doing a lot of factories, and not just mech play, but he made a lot of factories with his bio. In StarCraft 1, you have to make a ton of factories because StarCraft 1's mineral mining and stuff is a little bit different. So you kind of have to have a lot of factories, but kind of transitions over. And that was nice, getting the first hit off on Nada's Hellions. So Virus kind of having map control here with these Hellions. He's playing it nicely. Dealt with the harassments a lot better this time. I like his positioning on map control. I like him taking that fast third command center. And he's going to start pulling ahead in supply here pretty soon. So he's taking out units in the middle of the map with those Hellions. He's got that map control. He kind of knows what Nada's doing because he's got those Xel'Naga Watchtowers. If you have control of those towers, you kind of know what your opponent's doing. Now, this time, Virus adding more factors, and this is a little unusual. You don't see this very often, even in the double armory. So that's pretty cool. I like that choice. And meanwhile, it looks like Nada's going to be doing some of the same. You can't support as many factories, though, as Virus has. That is a lot of factories. When you've got that one factory devoted to Pre-Igniter Hellions, you've got the reactor there, you can get a lot of Hellions out, and those Hellions are great for not only rushing down siege tanks, but also harassment, taking map control, taking control of the Xel'Naga Watchtowers. So those Hellions are good for. It looks like Virus may be gearing up to do another Hellion drop. Does have that dropship following the Hellions. I think it'd be very unusual if that dropship, yeah, there he goes. Gonna drop those Hellions. Nada wants to spot this, and he will. This time the Hellions out in the middle. They can't actually drop out. And there's even a missile turret waiting for him. None of those Hellions are saved, so that's a pretty big victory there for Nada to take out a dropship and all the Hellions without losing anything. Now, I'll give you guys some numbers. Nada has more siege tanks right now than Virus. That's 6-4, but that's going to change very quickly because Virus has... He's making a lot more siege tanks. He's got a lot better economy. He can constantly produce 3 siege tanks. Nada's gone up to 3 factory siege tanks as well. But But he doesn't really have the economy to really support those just yet. He's just getting that orbital and his base up and running. He's transferring SCVs there now. And actually, Virus is going to make a Thor here. This is interesting. He is getting +1 armor and +1 weapons. We saw the best, I believe it was, try to do this against Nada himself. Didn't really work out. But here comes Nada now. He's actually going to do a little timing attack. This could work well. Oh, and that missile turret could have been very effective at helping dealing with those Vikings if Nada hadn't gotten there right when he did. Now, since Nada has the air control here, he can slowly move his siege tanks forward if he wants to and start picking away at Virus's units, picking away at that missile turret. As you guys can see, he's getting a little bit closer. Now, that Thor, he's actually making 2 Thors around. The first Thor is about to pop out, and that's going to be quite helpful. He can actually use that Thor to kind of rush down these siege tanks if he wants to. Nada actually using these Vikings to kind of control the air and use his Banshee to pick off siege tanks, but he's got to be very careful. There's so many missile turrets in that Thor doing a lot of anti-air damage. That's something else I didn't really mention about the Thors. If you add a Thor or 2 into your army when your opponent has a lot more Vikings than you, really pick those Vikings off like crazy. You can pick them off like crazy. They have a tendency to stack up, especially if you try to make a new age Viking flower. Even if Blizzard tells you can't, you try to do it anyways. Alright, so right now Nada's got somewhat of a soft contain up. It looks like a hard contain, but since he's not really hitting his opponent, or he doesn't really have him completely contained, he's just kind of at the exit. I'd say it's pretty much a soft contain. Virus stopped making Thors. He got those Thors in there, I think, to help deal with the Vikings, because he knows he doesn't have any Vikings of his own. So that was pretty smart. They can also do quite well against unsieged tanks if you can get them in the right spot. Or small groups of sieged up tanks. So if Nada tries to split these forces into 2 groups, those Thors will be quite invaluable. Now, as you guys can see, as our observer just highlighted, the 1-1 upgrades have finished. That's pretty huge. That really significantly helps Virus out here. Now, Nada is taking a 4th base faster than Virus is, and that's going to really help him out. I like this contain. It allows him to do stuff like that. He knows his opponent doesn't really have that much air. He's got the air superiority, so if any Banshees come out, he can just isolate them with those Vikings, dropships, whatever. He's got the Vikings to clean up the air units that might try to sneak around his contain. And his contain, his tanks are split so well, it's going to be really hard for Virus to break out. Is Virus going to go for it? I think that would be a huge mistake, but it looks like he might. He's going to come forward here. Yeah, this is a huge mistake. He's losing a lot of siege tanks. And look at that, Nada actually moving those Hellions forward to tank a few of those shots while the scan wears off. As that scan wears off, Virus can no longer see Nada's siege tanks. So that's why Nada was trying to do that with those Hellions, absorbing some of those shots while the scans were there. And Nada actually dropping a mule. You guys didn't get a shot of it. Nada repeatedly dropping mules on Virus's army, doing splash damage to his siege tanks. We'll get a shot of it here in a second. Nada's dropped 2 mules. He may drop a 3rd on top of Virus's army. And meanwhile, that was spotted. But that was really creative. We've seen that used a little bit, but Nada's got so many orbitals. It was a nice move. He was dropping mules on top of those siege tanks, and the splash damage did a significant amount of damage to those siege tanks. Now, Nada's probably going to land some of those Vikings to clean up that command center. Nada actually has a lot of map control. He's got the Xel'Naga watchtowers. He's got that sensor tower. He can pretty much see anything that Virus is doing right now. And Virus moving forward was a huge blunder. He is about to have a huge upgrade lead. Once he gets that +2 attack out for those tanks, that's going to be pretty huge. That's very important in this matchup, especially when you've got those important units like the Thors that just do damage very quickly. You got to make use of them while they're alive. I mean, Virus is trying his best to kind of move up here and do some damage, but I'm not sure how well this is actually working for him. Notice that Nada keeps throwing Hellions into the mix when his opponent scans. That's to absorb siege tank fire. Because Nada has the superior vision, that means that every time his opponent scans, it's the only time he can really hit Nada's tanks. And so see, he scans again, but Nada's actually moved his tanks a little bit further back. But if he throws some Hellions away, it absorbs a lot of those tank shots. And then when the scan wears off, Nada's tanks are still there. So right now, Nada is a little bit behind in supply, but he's got the better positioning here. He's got a lot more bases. Right now, for siege tank counts, it's 21 siege tanks to 17. That's pretty significant. There are 2 Thors out on the map. Nada has a significantly better SCP count, 72 to 60. He's going to get a lot of mules out at all these orbitals he's got scattered around the map, and that's going to be kind of the thing that ends up putting a nail in the coffin for Virus. Virus trying to take another command center, but again, Nada's got units. He's actually making missile turrets here where this command center is trying to land. He should just move one of those SCVs and block it because that that's not really going to work out. Here comes some Vikings to try to take that command center out. He's got this good amount of Vikings. Allows him to go and take these things out. using Vikings as Blizzard intended, not only for air mode, but for ground mode. He's going to land those Vikings on top of that command center. And here comes Virus for some Vikings of his own. Actually, realizing his opponent's Vikings were out of position, going to start targeting down those siege tanks, forcing the Vikings of Nada to come home. But since Nada has a much higher Viking count, he is going to clean these up very easily. There they go. A Viking battle. Now he can clean up that Banshee, no problem. And Virus is going to try to break through here. He's got some good upgrades, but Nada just has too many siege tanks. And, I mean, I want to say it's a bad choice, but what else can he do? He's completely contained. He's just trying to break out. He can't do a massive Doom Drop or anything like that because he doesn't, you know, he can't just suddenly turn over to full-on medevac production. And Nada's just got so many Vikings. You know, what can he do? That missile turret, or that command center can't fly away. It's surrounded by Nada's missile turrets. He's going to drop mules there. That's pretty smart. That's the best thing he can do at that base right now. Nada's just got this really strong contain up, and now this is a hard contain. Nada's got the entire map. Nada's got so many siege tanks here. He's got Vikings flying around. He's got sensor towers everywhere, missile turrets everywhere. Nothing will escape his eye. He's got a sensor tower and missile turrets at every place where Virus could go. Now, we may see some battle cruisers right now. First battle cruiser in production for Nada. He did put a fusion core down, and this is kind of what happens when you have much more economy than your opponent. Look, Virus is going to try to land a command center over here. We'll get a shot of it in a second. And he's basically going to be landing it on top of Nada's siege tanks. Virus is going to move forward here with his own siege tanks, trying to break through. He just doesn't have enough. The Thor trying to do damage, but when there are so many siege tanks, you just can't break through. And that command center landed on top of siege tanks. You guys didn't really get a shot of it, and it died instantly. That barracks is going to die, and the battle cruisers are joining the fleet. That was actually not the first battle cruiser I saw in the production tab. This is the first battle cruiser, and when you have air superiority, battle cruisers just clean up everything else. GG! Well played by Nada, well played by Virus, but Nada, realizing he may have been a little behind on economy, just cut his opponent off, put missile turrets, sensor towers everywhere, and surrounded him, cut him off from all the other bases, while Nada showed his impressive macro style, taking bases all over the map. And, you know, just outclassed Virus overall. Virus, good build order, dealt with Nada quite nicely, but sometimes you play against Nada, his macro is too good, even if his Hellions don't do damage. The Thor choice and the upgrades were good for Virus. I think there was a timing where he could have broken out of that contain and then did some serious damage because he had better tank count than Nada just slightly. He had those Thors out. He had the +1/1 upgrades. He might have been, that was the timing where he maybe pull some SCVs, absorb some siege tank fire, run forward with your tanks, break through that line, and then from there you can pressure your opponent, take advantage of the fact that he's expanding all over the map, try to shut those down. We're going to have an interview here in just a second of OGS Nada, the man himself. You'll see him up on camera as one of our awesome Korean commentators asks him some questions. But in all seriousness, I think that that play by Nada, the contain, was very nice. Virus could have broken out. He had the means necessary. I think he was kind of gearing up to do it, but he waited too long. And when you use Thors, they can be good against small siege tank numbers, but when the siege tank numbers get out of control, the Thors, they just can't close the range fast enough. They're just getting killed so quickly before they can even do damage. And that's kind of how the story goes with anything with siege tanks. If you've got Marauders, you know, they can do well against siege tanks when the numbers are small, but if you have just so many siege tanks, the Marauders can't close the distance. That's what happens. So here's our interview of OGS Nada. A translation for you guys. Well, it'll be put up on the screen here in just a second. Alright, there it is.
탈락한 가운데 이 선수만 유일하게 레전드의 자존심을 지켰습니다. 이훈열 선수입니다. 축하드려요.
Congratulations. Tell everyone what you think.
준비한 대로 경기가 잘 풀렸던 것 같고요.
네.
It turned out the way I
연습 때
practiced.
굉장히 준비 한 시간 동안 좀 많이 힘들었는데 그래도 오늘 경기를 이기게 돼서 너무 기쁘게 봅니다.
네. 자, 10년 내내
He said, you know, he couldn't really get
이겨낸
ready. He felt it was difficult getting ready. He found it a little bit difficult to
저는
practice.
진짜 항상 초심을 잃지 않으려고 노력을 하고 있고요.
네.
그리고 언제나 누구에게나 배우려고 하고 있고 또 저 스스로의 싸움으로 이겨냄으로써 가능.
He said he always tries to stand in a position where he's learning from others rather than being
자,
cocky. A
그리고
lot of programmers could learn
이제
from that.
올라가서 김소호 선수와 만나게 됩니다. 앞서 이제 경기를 치렀는데요. 김소호 선수에게는 어떠한 전략을 하실 건가요?
예, 요즘 제가
You said your meeting is the next line. What kind of strategies do you have planned?
네.
충분히 좋은 경기 보여드릴 수 있을 것 같고 네, 조금 더 높은 자리까지 바라보고 있기 때문에 김태호 선수와의 좋은 경기 충분히 열심히 하고 나오면 승산이 있다고 생각합니다.
자, 그리고 오늘 10년 동안 응원하시는 분이
He said he's preparing, he's practicing, he wants to show some good games and expect to see the best from him, better than you've seen before.
예, 이렇게까지 오랫동안 사랑해 주셔서 너무 감사드리고 앞으로도 이 팬분이 단 한 명이 남을
He said
때까지
thanks to the fans for supporting him for a really long time.
저 스스로를 위해 열심히 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
네, 축하드립니다. 네, 이상 이윤열
He'll try his
선수를
best.
만나봤습니다.
For himself and his fans. Spoken like a true Nada. Just being very, I don't want to say humble, but, you know, he has that mindset that a lot of pro gamers, I think, don't. Like, he and Nesty both have the mindset of, I'm pretty good, I win a lot, I'm a consistent player, but I never get cocky and I always want to improve. I'm always trying to improve. Even if I'm beating everyone, I'm looking for somebody who beats me because I want to improve. I want to improve my style constantly, consistently. And sometimes it's not always about improving your macro, improving your mechanics. Sometimes it's about understanding the game better. And that's what Nada really wants to do. And sometimes you see players, I don't want to call out any names, but I'm sure you guys have seen some players out there that get really confident, then suddenly slump. You know, they beat everybody, they're crushing the entire world, and then suddenly they slump. And you know why? It's because it's not that they stop practicing, but they're not trying to get better. They're not sitting there going, all right, what can I do to get better? They don't. When they win their games, like, yeah, I won my game, I'm awesome, I'm the best. But Nada's like, I won my game, but how could I have won it better? And that's kind of a good attitude to have. So I really respect that from Nada. Obviously, he's been improving for a long time and did quite well in StarCraft 1. For those of you guys who don't know, you should look up those stats and those statistics for Nada. There's a lot of impressive results there. So we are going to have a 2-minute break here in just a minute. And actually right now. So see you guys in 2 minutes.
No time for chit chat, blah blah, let's get down to business.